Hi, I'm Ziad Abaza. I play the role of Addy in Die Before You Die.
I'm Dan Pringle, and I'm co-writer of Die Before You Die with Ziad and the director of the film.
And my name is Shaikh. I'm an actor who plays the role of Maz in Die Before You Die. Thriller, claustrophobic, psychological, spiritual, and smart.
What about you, Dan? Would you add anything to that?
I'll try and find some words that kind of allude to the unconventional nature of the film from an outsider's perspective. Not quite sure what, maybe esoteric.
I guess I'd add dark. I think that's the one we're probably missing. Dark as well.
Well, there's not a lot of light in that hole, so that's relevant. That is relevant.
So I play Maz, aka Mazness, who is basically Addy, who you play, his right-hand man. I basically say that he's Addy's voice of reason.
So I play the role of Addy BC, who is this influencer that is very tunnel visioned on his channel and on the desire to make it as big, as popular as possible, as many people seem to be in this situation or living that kind of life. I'm grateful that in reality I don't live that kind of life. Doing the research for this role really made me appreciate that I don't live that kind of life. But yeah, it's someone who basically is so focused on making their channel successful that they might neglect their family, or they might be a bit of a dickhead, or they might, all within kind of good intent, like there's a good person like in there, but it just kind of, when you're so focused on something, you can't help but have other parts of your life suffer, and that's kind of his situation. So yeah, he gets involved in this challenge and he thinks it's going to be good for his channel, but then it kind of turns into something else, and I don't want to say too much because obviously I'd like people to watch the movie.
I think we can start with kind of the genesis of it. We were kind of post COVID, post lockdowns, and your brother actually came to me and said, I've got an idea for a film. Would you be interested in developing it? And ultimately, I'd like to be involved in the making of it. And I said, there's something interesting in that. His idea was an exploration of a guy who gets trapped underground and has to work out how he's going to escape from this difficult situation, but also has this kind of epiphany, existential kind of realization that he's talking to himself. And the context of the idea that your brother Leon presented me with was slightly different, but I just thought, that's really interesting. Maybe we just need to change the scenario by which this character ends up in this situation. And if it's going to be an exploration of the nature of mind, the nature of ego, then why not go to the most extreme end of the spectrum and take somebody who's completely and utterly reliant on their external identity, that external sense of self, an influencer, a YouTuber, and have them in that situation. So we have this real dramatic contrast between somebody trying to get closer to their true self and somebody who has to, effectively put on a mask and identify as somebody else every single day.
A lot, because the script talks about a lot of things that I think resonate with me. And those things are like being a Muslim, the spiritual side, Sufism, death, and then more importantly, like ego death and like getting rid of your ego. Because look, I've always looked at it like this, right? Art should always help mankind. That's just what I think of art is, right? So when I've read this film, I was like, I've learned from reading this script. This is the reason why I wanted to work within the arts. I can't name another British film that speaks about Sufism, spirituality, influencer culture over the last like 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, maybe not even in the English language, man.
Yeah, very true, very true, very true.
I mean, from the very, it'd be impossible not to acknowledge Buried. Like, you know, I'd seen it, I knew about it, and when I watched it, you know, over a decade ago, I really enjoyed it. And when Leon first said, you know, what about this, you know, presented this sort of this seed of an idea of someone being trapped underground, obviously a very different type of story. It was impossible to disassociate it from Buried, like, you know, the nature of it being so we predominantly one person. So that was always in the back of my mind when we were first started out to develop it. You know, also very much from an execution standpoint, like how you go about doing it, like from a production perspective. And Buried is, regardless of what you think of it story wise, it's quite simple. It is extremely well done in terms of the actual production and the way in which they kept your attention with, you know, with very limited resources. So that did play a part. But then thematically and from a narrative perspective, the story is obviously very different. And there's not a lot of direct comparables really. Midsummer was a film that I'd seen in the last couple of years where there's a kind of a sort of spiritual, philosophical, mystical folk thing going on that you really have to work to unpack as an audience, and I respected that, and I think that kind of maybe subconsciously played a part in there. But you know, it's maybe more old school storytelling and folklore, and you know, we spoke a lot about Christian myths and Islamic myths, and kind of old folk tales played more of an influence on the nature of the story, because it's more of an Aesop's fable than it is a modern day, you know, narrative fiction piece of cinema.
I would want people to kind of understand what dying before you die means. And that's going to be individual for everyone, right? But for me, Die Before You Die, after doing the film, before doing the film to after, it changed. But now, after doing it and now it's coming out for release, is very much like allowing yourself to experience death whilst being alive.
I do think, having, you know, gone through the process of developing and making the film, that I do think that remembrance of death is a really important part of life. Like now, more so than ever before. You know, not that I ever considered death properly before, but now I really understand and appreciate the importance of reflecting on the finite nature of your existence, and coming to terms with the fact that you're going to die and everybody around you is going to die at some point. We're all going out the same way, and not expecting everybody to come out the film and engage in Al Hazali's 20 times a day. But you know, I think if people come out the film and every now and then they say to themselves, and you know, I tend to do it now from time to time, you know, you're going to die. If you just say it to yourself every once in a while, and when things get on top of you, or things get the better of you, or you're in sort of slightly tricky situations, sometimes you just need to say to yourself, you know, calm down. This is limited, and you're going to die, and that's inevitable. You know, if there was one sort of, you know, quite specific takeaway, it would be we've got to try and potentially. We've got to lose this morbidity, this untouchable, this unspeakable kind of concept of death in the way we live. It's this concept that no one wants to talk about. We've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, in the sense that we've rejected religion in a lot of quarters of society. But as a result of that, we don't talk about death at all. We've got no relationship with death, and it's scary, like, and people are afraid.
Yeah, it's never spoken about, and I don't know whether that, because I can, even in my family, being a British Muslim family like Pakistanis, there's been funerals that I've gone to where there's just it's never spoken about. Death, the death of someone, or what like they've experienced, or what their thoughts on death are, or even have that morbid conversation of how do you want my funeral to go. Like,
but historically and traditionally, we probably all encountered it. We're like, no, you don't want to talk about that. That's a bit bleak. That's a bit stark.
Yeah. Let's just laugh instead.
You're putting a downer on it.
Yeah, but it's not. I don't want to sound like a negative person, but it's like, I'm not saying watch the film and then speak about death all the time, but having a pondering about it can help change your perspective on how you live in the real world, like in reality, right? I just want people to take the good sentiment from it.
Yeah, it's a positive death is an acknowledgement that you lived, and fundamentally it is a positive thing. And we're just too used to framing it purely in the negative, as being the end of something and not the acknowledgement that something started.
Yeah. One of my all-time favourite films of all time is Enemy of the State, Will Smith.
Yeah, that's a thriller.
That's a thriller, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a spy thriller, isn't
That's
it?
a spy thriller, yeah. That's I'll put that as one of my top 3 films. Just that, I just love it.
Solid movie.
Yeah.
Solid movie.
So it is a thriller.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd definitely class that as a thriller.
I thought it was a drama.
What about you, Dan?
There's a lot. I find it hard when you get thrown those questions and you're gonna have to pick something out of the canon of cinema. Some of the great. You'll inevitably forget some of the great films you've watched, but I don't know. In recent times, Prisoners, the Denis Villeneuve film with Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal, Nightcrawler. No, I'm quite eclectic when it comes to films and genre, even though I tend to make films that have some genre DNA. I'm not beholden to any one particular type of genre or. Yeah.
I mean, you've given a good selection.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
Vim. I'm judging myself. Yeah. For me, undoubtedly The Tower.
Why?
Just the views.
Oh.
The views.
Before, say if you're gonna die anyway up there,
Yeah.
at least you're looking at something.
The views.
Right.
I mean, it must be beautiful up there.
Yeah.
You see the world.
Rather than if you get buried.
Yeah.
Being buried is probably one of the worst ways of dying.
Being
No?
buried, it's just a ball of mud. Like,
Wow.
well, if it's like it is in the film, there's no sound, there's no air, there's barely any air. You're up there.
But at least you're kind of
You get the sunset, you get the sunset, you get the sunrise.
What would you choose?
Well, it's an interesting one because obviously at the top you're open to all the elements, right? The wind, the snow, the heat. You can't do anything about anything. I also thought about which one gives you more control to end your own life. And being at the top gives you the choice to jump and end it. Whereas if you're stuck, you can't really do
no
anything.
choice.
Yeah, you
'Cause
can't.
you can't
do it.
come
What are
up
you
for
going to
air.
do? Choke yourself with mud or something?
Yeah.
But that would just be really unpleasant.
Ramadan.
So sunrise, sunset.
Sunrise to sunset. What's that? The longest that I think it's been is what? How many hours?
It's like 18
18,
or something, innit?
yeah, I'd say 16 to 18.
Yeah. And that's with nothing as well.
Yeah, that's no food,
that's
no
nothing,
water, no nothing.
Yeah.
For me, that's 18 hours.
For me, it was definitely filming the thing. I think I went 6 days without consuming anything, but there was a break, so it was like 3 days, then 1 day I
6
ate, and then
days?
3 days. Yeah, 3 days.
Well, yeah, for the film, you committed to going nil by mouth. Because we were shooting chronologically once you went into the grave, you wanted to look
I just
physically
thought, and just have that same feeling and stuff like that. And to be honest, bro, even on the third day, you're just like, I'm all right. No, I haven't consumed nothing.
For 3 days?
For 3 days, nothing.
Wow.
And then, but on the third day, I remember walking to set, and I was kind of like, and I thought, this is mad. Yeah, because I was wobbling. Yeah. 3
Really?
days. 3 days. Yeah, but it took 3 days, so you could. It's pretty.
3 days before you started getting hazy.
Yeah, before I started
Hazy.
feeling a bit like, yeah.
It never affected your performance though, really. I never remember you I never really getting the sense that you were slowing down, like, and that you were struggling to like concentrate.
So the first thing that I thought straight away was like bed.
Yeah.
Because you're in this
Yeah.
ground for that long. And I think we take that for granted that we can sleep in beds every day. Like luxury sleep.
First thing that comes to me is my partner.
Yeah.
Like is that human contact, like with your closest people. The idea of that not being accessible to you in any way is obviously, it's important to separate yourself from that, hankering. But yeah, I think that's, and also not knowing what they think or how they think and what they're going through. and not being able to reassure in any way. I mean, if we're putting ourselves specifically in the situation from the film.
Well, I make a really mean apple crumble, so I think
It says no food and drink.
no, it's just like you are without food and drink, but you can pick food and drink.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I need to try this apple crumble, bro.
I'll make it for you guys.
Literally.
Straight to the crumble. That's the thing that's missing the most.
Yeah, I see what you tried to do. You tried to go for the look how great of a human I am. I miss my that goes without saying though. That goes without all of that goes without saying. Your mum trying to make us look bad.
He's like my bed.
Bed and apple crumble. We was going on that vibe, Dan. Are you gonna miss your Xbox? What about your Xbox?
Okay, that wraps up our Q&A. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you check out the movie.